just love playing with the order, don't you, Marie? You just keep it changing. For me, my the policy I'm actually kind of most proud to run on is the wealth tax. I am a big fan of taking 1% of those households with assets of 3.4 million, or above, and increasing to 5% for those with assets of 5.7 million, and 10% for those with 18.2 million. So I am absolutely proud to run on a manifesto which is looking to try and equalize, even if too slowly, the massive inequalities. I keep coming back to that, that saying, how the other half live. Well, because it isn't the other half now, is it? It's the other 99%. And it's just not right. So anything that will increase the coffers, and I mean, watching the red Tories talk about economic growth as the way of improving the economy, it's just pie in the sky. They're not going to get these growth rates that they are advocating for. They'll be lucky to get 2%. And growth has been anemic over the last 14 years because of the catastrophic mismanagement of the government, and kamikaze just absolutely detonating the economy. And so, no, I'm really proud to be running on a wealth tax, actually, just because a little more fairness doesn't cost that much to everybody else.
Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, I think the thing that would be most important is to follow through on what we'd want to bring, which is to legislate to ensure that there's no further privatisation of the NHS. And also, I might say, along with that, pushing the incoming government to have an emergency budget, because one of the things that's absolutely clear and has been underlined today by the Institute for Fiscal Studies and the Institute for Government, the Joseph Brown Free Foundation, is that whether it's the Tories or Labour that are in charge, there's going to be at least an £18 billion black hole for public services. Now, that's really important because, we're doing what we can here in Scotland to protect our public services. And if you look at England, council after council has actually gone bust. They've gone into effective liquidation. They're only being protected by rules that are put in place to make sure that services can't shut down. And that's because of the relentless cuts that we've seen coming through from austerity over the past 14 years. And this is a policy that's failed to work. They've redressed it. It's failed to work again. They've redressed it again. It's failed to work again. And now we've seen various iterations, and we see the Labour Party coming in, and they're going to continue with this failed story. And as Peter was saying, it's been a place of stalled growth. Individual per person GDP in the UK has not moved. It's been static for the longest period of time on record. And we've seen productivity absolutely fail to move on the dial. So I'd like to see the emergency budget to make sure that we're investing, we're making different decisions to invest in our public services so that it can feed through into Highland Council and other council areas through the consequentials that we get in the Scottish budget. And I'd also like to see the fact that they reverse the Scottish Government have been saying 9% because they're factoring in all their borrowing powers. But the House of Commons Library have the cut to our capital funding, which is the money that we would use to spend on building new hospitals, for example, and roads and housing. And again, very brave of you, Rory, to talk about housing cuts when the Tory government have been responsible for that level of capital funding cut. I'd like to see that reversed. And those are the things that we'd like to get working with right away, in addition to all the issues that we have brought forward in the manifesto to tackle the cost of living for people.
Rudy.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'd like to start by saying it's interesting hearing Drew talk about austerity. The UK government's provided a record block grant of 41 billion a year, which is the highest since devolution began, as well as the additional Barnett consequentials. In the last term, we saw the UK government invest 2.7 billion through levelling up growth in Scotland. We're committed to growing the economy with the free ports, infrastructure that we've seen investment like the Corran ferry infrastructure with Cabra. We've seen that money come from the UK government. But what we do see what is causing austerity is the Scottish government needs to spend the money wisely. There's been millions of pounds spent on independence papers, on ferries that might never sail. So, I think it's important that the Scottish government take responsibility for its spending choices instead of blaming it on someone else somewhere else. In real terms, the Scottish government funding is higher than it's ever been before the Conservatives took office. That's our commitment to devolution.
The lowest percentage of a Westminster budget that's ever been in the history of devolution.
It's the highest since
the lowest percentage. The fact is, it's the lowest percentage, and we've seen it. Like I say, the Scottish government are being kind because they're levering in their borrowing powers. At least a 9% cut to our capital funding budget as well. And
because they exploded inflation and detonated the budget and didn't protect the capital. The number is higher because you exploded.
If we're looking at austerity, COSLA have claimed that the latest budget from the Scottish government meant a real term cut of 62.7 million in the core grant to local government. Now, Drew, from your experience in the council, you'll know that is devastating to local government. That is austerity times 10. That is cutting local services that matter to our constituents. But in order to go back and answer the question, the bit of the manifesto that I'm most proud of is our commitments to healthcare. By the end of the next term, we've committed to having 92,000 more nurses and 28,000 more doctors in the UK. That's by 2023, or more than in 2023. Sorry, and I think this is really important because what we have seen is here in Scotland, the SNP, they've not met the A&E targets once in 3.5 years.
The best performing
not met 62 days cancer referral standards in over a decade. And you can say it's the best performing in the UK all you want, but that is little comfort to the 1 in 10 people in Highland who are on an NHS waiting list.
Of course it is. And that's why we need the NHS to be properly funded, Rory. That's why we need.
That means that 90% of people in Highland aren't on an NHS waiting list, which is a good thing. And it's still the best performing A&E in the entire UK. And those nurses that you're proud to run on won't be in Scotland. So it's a really strange, because it's devolved. And by the way, I agree with you about the austerity to the max for the councils thing. But again, because Kamakwasi exploded the budget and inflation, and so there was significantly less real terms money coming from the Westminster. I agree with you. I actually completely agree with what you're saying there, Rory. The answer is independence.